Good morning. Welcome to our first activity of Adoption Month 2022. This morning, we have a live panel with adoptive parents talking about their role in advocating for their child through the school system. So our theme this month for Adoption Month is trauma, inclusion, and school. Advocating and supporting our children through their school years, which sounds like a big role, but is actually bigger than it even sounds. It's a huge undertaking. Like definitely raising children who've been through the foster care system and then adopted, given all the trauma. All aspects of their lives are complicated. School is probably one of the biggest sources of stress and can be very, very difficult for kids who've had really difficult early parts of their lives. So we thought it was really important to bring in the experts on their kids. They're not education experts, but they're educators. They're experts on their own children. And because of their advocacy, have developed all kinds of skills, awareness, understanding, and gathered all kinds of information around how to effectively advocate for children who don't necessarily fit right in a little box. So we're really, really pleased to have Catherine Derry, who's on our staff team, Kim Driscoll, who's also on our staff team, and Corinne Kilpatrick, who is a participant and also volunteer with our support network. So welcome. And we're just going to go, we don't have a ton of time today, but we thought we'd just go through a few questions to kind of spark the conversation to, help people in the adoption world, in the education world, and in the general public to better understand what this journey's like and what you can do to help kids have a better experience. So what I'm going to do is, my first question is, I'm going to get each of you to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your family and children. So Kim Driscoll, I'll have you start.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Good morning, everyone. So as Suzanne said, my name is Kim. I am an adoptive parent and a bio parent. So I currently have a daughter who's about to turn 25, and my son is 11 and a half. Our journey through adoption, I'd say, went pretty smooth, the beginning of it. We all know about the long wait times and stuff, but we were matched when my son was 5 and a half. And I say unfortunately, because it is a lot of trauma that he went through before he came to us. We were his 10th home. He had also had 2 failed adoptions in there. So he was taken at 4 months old. And by the time he was 5 and a half, he finally has come to the home that he belongs to and he'll be with forever. So our journey through it's been up and down. We have a lot of different challenges, but advocacy, I'd say, is almost right up there with loving that child and introducing. So advocacy in the school system is a must. And it's so funny because I almost get out of the school system. My daughter graduated grade 12 on a Thursday, and Connor moved in on Friday to start school. I went all the way back to kindergarten after getting all the way to grade 12.
Yes.
First child. So Connor does have some diagnoses, and he has some very common ones that you'll find with children in care, which would be your attachment disorder, complex PTSD. He does have ADHD. He does have some OCD, and he also has been diagnosed just in the past 2 years with FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.
Right.
So to say that he needs an advocate in all parts of his life would be true. So this conversation today about advocating for your child in the school system is so important.
Right.
And we'll get into further ways that I did that later in the question.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Kim. Okay, Corinne, can you talk a little bit about what your family is like and your adoption experience?
Of course. Hi, I'm Corinne Kilpatrick, as Suzanne said. My husband and I adopted twins 2 days after their 6th birthday. I was the 5th person they had called mom. And I never thought of this before, Kim, but they had a failed adoption as well. They were in a long-term foster shortly before we met them, and were removed from that home. But they were supposed to have stayed there to continue on with the adoption process. Our twins, of course, not of course, but did have a lot of trauma early on before the age of 2. They were removed from mom at 22 months. And twin number 1 has a global developmental delay, is microcephalic, has ADHD, has reactive attachment disorder. Twin number 2 has autism, oppositional defiance disorder, reactive attachment disorder, ADHD, and just last fall, a year ago, was diagnosed with dyslexia. I always forget this term because they've changed it. It's not dyslexia anymore. It's learning disorder as otherwise specified in the area of decoding letters.
Wow.
So that brought with it all of these diagnoses between the two, brought with it a lot of challenges in the school system. And as Kim said, advocacy was something I had to be doing all the time.
Yeah.
In every venue. One of them, twin number 1, is more delayed cognitively, and twin number 2 is more delayed socially, emotionally.
Oh, interesting.
They are both 15 now. And the reason for all of these diagnoses is the suspicion is FASD. But because twin number 1 only has 2 of the facial characteristics, you need 3 for diagnosis, and we could not get an admission from mom.
Right. Yes. We could do a whole webinar on FASD,
Yes.
which we will, which we have. But thanks, Corinne. That's, complicated. Yeah, lots going on. Okay, so Catherine, can you describe a little bit about your family?
Yes, I will. And I'm going to just let everyone know I have a cold. So this is not my real voice. I apologize. I have 2 children, 14-year-old and an 18-year-old. The 18-year-old is my biological child, and the 14-year-old I adopted when she was 2 years old. And she would have been taken at the hospital at birth from her biological mom. And she was like 27 months when she came home. She has some trauma. She has some attachment issues, and she's got several diagnoses. So her biggest diagnosis would be moderate intellectual disability. A general age she sort of functions at is about 5 years old, which means she's on what you call an individualized curriculum at school, doing like kindergarten grade 1 work. She has ADHD and autism too.
Right. Wow. Thank you. Interesting people. So what has your child's experience in school been like? And we'll have Kim start.
Okay.
Which I know is a simple question, but a big,
Yes, yeah, I was trying to think of exactly how I was going to answer this one because it is so big. I would say that my son has social challenges. That's a huge one, especially when you're starting school. Academics for me come second, to mental
Right.
health. So social challenges such as not being able to read other people's cues. That's one of his big issues. Like it's almost like having blinders on, and he's just so energetic with his ADHD that he's like, let's go do this, but he's not paying attention to the people around him that are like, no, thank you, or like, I don't want to do that. Let's do this. So I've really noticed that is something that is continuing with him. So we always are working on those social challenges.
Right.
He does have academic challenges due to his learning disabilities also. So he needs a lot of help with that in school, especially, of course. Transitions. That was one of his biggest challenges in school is transitions, not only transitioning from home to school, but then also classroom to classroom, teachers coming and going. He unfortunately had where teachers had to leave halfway through the year and like a new teacher had to come in.
Yes.
Changing grades. I mean,
Yes.
so many challenges from like even where you walk in the classroom, what door do you enter, what bus you take, all that kind of stuff. So there are challenges at school. Um, but I have to say that he's come across some really great teachers and some
Mm,
really great staff too.
yeah.
So I don't want us to always be looking at, what's not working, right? Because there
Yeah.
is stuff working. We just need to tweak it and we need to
Yes.
advocate for a few more changes, right? Sometimes a
Yes.
lot, but I want to stay on the positive note too. So
Yeah.
I would say that in school, that would be, I mean, and that really encompasses almost the whole day when you're looking at transition
Yes.
to social changes and interactions to his academics.
Yeah. Now, Corinne, what's your children's experience in school been like?
Quite similar to what Kim had said. Twin number one struggled more academically, did very well socially, very outgoing, very happy, made friends easily, played at a much lower level, so attracted friends who were much younger. Still happily now would play with cars and action figures, and he's in high school. Still plays at a much lower level, still plays a lot of imaginary games and things like that. So in school, he did well with friends. He does well with friends. Needed more one-to-one support with academics, but still quite confident and happily, moved along. I always had to advocate strongly because his behavior is subtle. His behavior is hidden. It's not big and in your face.
Right.
So most of his behavior stems from reactive attachment disorder. And so it is seen mostly by primary caregivers or by people as he starts to attach. So oftentimes supports would be taken away from him because he's passive in his behavior, when in reality, if he's being passive, he's it's good, that's what you want. But then you pull supports and he doesn't feel safe, and then he would go off. And
Right.
they really know what had happened because he was doing so well.
Yeah.
Twin number two struggles greatly socially and emotionally, so he didn't need as much help academically, but if a teacher did not seek to connect with him, he would not learn from them. So he would say, you were harsh with me, you were mean to me, you punished me and I didn't do anything wrong, I'm never going to learn math from you.
Right.
And he would just write them off. So if they would not take the time to connect with him genuinely, and these children are a master of knowing when someone is genuine and when they're not.
Yes.
If the teachers would not connect honestly and genuinely, he would refuse to learn from them.
Wow. What amazing to have that,
Mhm.
to have solved that puzzle, because it's like a puzzle piece. That's huge.
Yes.
Okay, Catherine, what about your kids and your daughter's experience in the school system?
So, on the plus side, I will say she's super social. She loves going to school. Like, it's really important to her. It's part of her routine. I can't even show up at school to drop something off and have her run into me in the hallway because mommy's home, school, right? Like, what are you doing here, right? So, but she does have social emotional challenges and does not always realize when the other kids like her, she gets in their space, may annoy them. If they don't return her attention, she may get frustrated. And like a kindergartner, preschooler, she might hit them.
Right.
So, and the same with staff. Like, she has trouble if you say too many words to her. In general, our society is really wordy. So you might say, you've got to do this, that, and your work here and put that on your desk. She's just gonna like lose it because that's just too much information.
Right.
And how do you think a little kid might react to that? So each year it gets more challenging and challenging as the intellectual divide between her and the other kids gets
Right.
bigger. She
Right.
feels it, and she will lash out. In the past, not in high school, but in the past in middle school, she's been suspended and stuff. She really does not understand that the way she's reacting has any, like, she does not understand consequence or a link between her actions.
Right.
She just knows that she lashes out when she doesn't understand or she doesn't feel safe. So,
Right. And those expectations when she's like a 4-year-old doing that same behavior
yeah.
is different than a teenager, but she's operating in a 4-year-old emotional.
Yeah,
sort
like
of
a 4
way.
or 5-year-old. And I've had teachers or people write me notes and say, can you talk to her about that? And I'm like, I can remind her that we don't put hands on. Is it going to change it? No. Is she going to
Yeah.
make a connection between what she did? No, because I've seen it at home, you know, get in a fight with your brother, hit him like 5 times, maybe on the 5th time, he hits you back, you crumble to the floor and go, why did he hit me? Right? Like
Right.
she has no idea, right?
Yeah. She's surviving. She's in survival brain at those
Yeah,
times. Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
So
Okay. So, generally pretty positive. It's interesting hearing a lot of positives, although obviously complicated, experiences. So how about I want you to talk a little bit about, you guys are all 3 of you are like, you're just amazing advocates. As I've gotten to know you and know some of your stories in your lives. So maybe talk a little bit about what your experience has been like advocating for your child. What worked, what didn't work, what would you do? What advice do you have for other parents around advocacy based on your experience of advocating? And I'll jump to Kim again.
Okay. I want to start off by first saying, don't be too hard on yourself, right? You don't know the journey until you're walking through it.
Yeah.
We all have made mistakes. We all have sat back and thought like, okay, I wonder if I should call about this, or I don't want to be the parent who's, they think is overprotective or overbearing or bugging the teacher. It's hard to be an advocate that you need to do on a constant basis. It's really hard. Sometimes you just want them to understand and just get it, and you're tired at home. So please be gentle with yourself. Take some of our advice today. Reach out to us. As we said earlier, we're coordinators, Catherine and I. We have a lot of tricks, and so we're going to hopefully teach some of them to you today.
Excellent point.
Thanks. So what didn't work was not advocating. It's very
Right.
simple. Sitting back and hoping that your child's getting what they need at school isn't going to work. So what I started off with was that communication. That's what it really boils down to, right? So we need to communicate with the teachers. And the way I started with that was through emails, because we always get their email address right away. So you send off the emails and you're hoping that you get a response within a day or two. Sometimes I hope it's an hour, but I know they're very busy. But everything seems so important when your child is struggling at school. So that communication back and forth was the way I started it. And then we started to say, listen, we're still struggling. What other resources do you have? So then we started bringing in guidance and the resource teacher. So that started where I'll say a big trick for me was group emails. That's part of it. That's worked. Make sure that everyone is in the same email. Every communication you have with that school involves your principal, sometimes your vice principal too, if you want to add them, because a lot of times they're stepping in when the principal's not available. So your teacher, your child's teacher, resource, guidance, vice principal, and principal. And then yourself. And I will say what did work for me also was adding in my child's psychologist into my emails. Because of course, his psychologist is a very important person in his life and needs to know what's going on with him, to get the bigger picture, to be able to help us come up with strategies and ways that we can help his trauma and his other diagnoses. So even though I was doing emails, then went to larger groups, then went to everybody in the school and advocated for, like, please tell us, be transparent on what you can offer my child. I'm not a teacher. I don't know what resources you have. So I would even say, like, do you have social groups? Can he attend any social groups, learning groups? Is there any fun things at lunch that he can go and you can help him and guide him socially? Because they're always guiding him through academics throughout the day in his subjects. We come to the realization he needs an EA, right? He needs that one-on-one support. That wasn't easy because I don't know if every district's the same, but you normally have to apply for EAs well in advance of the beginning of the school year. So let's say it's April, I do believe, is when you apply. So if your child's in the school system and struggling and struggling, you're trying everything and they need more support than what the teacher can offer and what resource and guidance, then you need to look into the EAs, right? My son, I advocated strongly enough, and I was lucky to have the teacher advocate just as strong that he was an EA, and he ended up getting an EA in January, which
Right.
normally it's only if you move to the school or you join the school and you have medical conditions that you need a one-on-one, that you get one in the middle. So it can be done, guys.
Right.
So even with all this open communication, we were still having a lot of struggles, a lot of communications from the school, and he did get suspended once also. He did not understand, because with attachment disorder, they say that you're not allowed to go to school. And of course, I'm very protective of him and his heart and his mind.
Yeah.
So I didn't present it that, they don't want you there and things like that. We made it a mummy Sunday.
Right.
And we tried to learn from the experience of what had happened. And I made like a short story, like, what would a child do? Sometimes that's a really good way to teach your children, is don't put them as the person in your story. Allow that to happen naturally. So get a book about what happened at school, because there's so many out there that really describe social learning challenges, emotional challenges at school. And that way they can see themselves in that. And that's what my son did. He connected with the book. I went and got 3 books that weekend.
Nice.
He connected with the books, and he really then could sort of, Mom, is that what I did, Mom? And he didn't even know. And he broke down sobbing. So it's really about attuning to the children, knowing their needs,
Yeah.
an advocate for them, right? Even with that.
Yeah.
We faced too many challenges.
Yes.
And he wasn't getting what he needed from the schools. His PLP wasn't being consistent. His BLP wasn't being followed, even with me asking and having every 6 weeks, updates, etc. We had to go to district.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest thing to do, but you know what? We can help you with that too. And so can other people. Reach out to us. We actually just posted some of the policies and everything that will help you. Now, the policy 703 Appendix D might be saying a little bit too particular here, but I'm telling you, it was everything. It was the change that sparked all the good now that is coming out of it. So don't be afraid.
Just with that policy, it's for those who don't have it memorized, who are outside the
Okay, it's children with exceptionalities.
Okay.
So the policy states that
Around inclusion.
children with exceptionalities are more or less not to be held to the same standards or expectations as other children within the school. And of course, my son's diagnoses alone, because I went to them and I said, like, would you not consider him, an exceptional child under this list? And they said yes. I said, well, therefore, you're mandated to follow your policy. Once I went to district, and I did quote their policies, I had examples, I had the emails. It was 21 typed pages, because I had had that many experiences over the 7 months that I could show I've tried every avenue. Like, I'm very resourceful. Once
Yeah.
it was district, they really sat up and they really listened. So
Yeah.
same as everything, there's a way to do it. So start with
Yeah.
start with that communication. You
Yeah.
open and let them know what your needs are, what your worries are, what you're scared about, what's going on at home with your child
Yeah.
after he's off the bus and what he's saying and communicating to
Yeah.
you. So we now have a BLP that is being followed. We have a PLP that is
Wow.
being followed. We also have transitions that are being handled. He has 6 brain breaks a day, and they're during transition times, right? He chooses
Right.
3 different ideas, such as, he can listen to a song, he can read a book, he can go to the gym and throw a ball. So he has different physical or, mental, emotional ones, because music to Connor is emotional.
Can
So
I,
to put him in a great mood again. So we make sure what he listens to is really positive and pumps him for the rest of the day. So
can
we
I,
now have supports put in place
yeah,
that really guide him to being able to learn effectively throughout the day, feel safe, feel supported, and we have really good open communication with the school. So
right.
it can be done, guys. It's just really challenging. But
Yeah.
please reach out if you need any help with it.
Yeah. And don't go through the proper
Yes, channels.
processes, but don't be afraid to move it forward to the next level
Absolutely.
because yeah. Very cool. Thank
Our
you.
kids deserve it.
Can I just ask a quick question? Just I'm curious, but some of those breaks or whatever, were those your ideas or their ideas? Like,
Well,
were you
that's
able
where,
to?
sorry, that's where what I said about having your full team, it was his
Yeah.
psychologist.
Okay. Yeah.
And it made
Yeah.
the world of difference, guys. Like, to
Yeah.
have those breaks. And they know that if they're tuning to him all day and his EA, his teachers, then they know when he needs an extra one, and he's allowed those. So
Yeah.
you'll see he crumple a paper up on the desk or he starts snapping pencils. Let's go have a break.
Yeah.
And we use the term brain break so he understands we are giving your brain a break right now. You need
Right.
it, you want it. And he now communicates and looks at them. And this is huge when you're talking, communicate to the teacher or his EA and say, I need a break right now without amping up, without those behaviors,
Yes.
because his behaviors are symptoms of his diagnoses. It's not
Yes.
him not wanting to behave at school. He finds it very difficult.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Well done. Jeez. That's amazing, that journey. Okay, Corinne, what was your experience like of advocating for your children? And then what worked, what didn't work? What do you want to let people know about in terms of describe your journey, but what would be helpful for other families?
Okay. So Kim and I, as we spoke earlier, had a very similar experience with advocating for our children. And I mean, I won't go into that as in depth because she just kind of took you through that whole process. But I as well kind of went through a long process with kind of a particular incident. So my child came to the end of grade 3, twin number 1, and it said that he had not met grade level outcomes for math or language arts, but they were recommending grade 4 placement, but he was not, there was no large plan in place to meet that learning gap. And so I said, well, then I guess we're treating him as neurotypical. So then I would like him retained. And they said, well, no, we don't agree with that. I said, well, then I want to see the plan for next year. Well, there isn't one because he's not far enough behind. And I said, okay, so I would like either a plan for next year, or we're looking at him as neurotypical and he's staying back. And so that was my battle. And it was all very pleasant. I mean, there was I'm sure they were frustrated with me, but everything was very civil and we followed all the right channels and took it as high as we needed to, with support, from the psychologist and all of our support, that the team that we've surrounded ourselves with over the years. And he repeated grade 3. And it was by far the best thing I've ever done because it gave my twins who had a shared trauma some distance from each other.
Yes.
And continues to do that. Things that have worked for me in the school system have been forming amazing relationships with staff. And it could be the staff member you don't expect. Maybe the secretary at the school you click really well with, and then she starts looking out for your kid, and you get phone calls when you need to, and you end up getting things. But also controlling myself. I'm very outspoken. I can be kind of loud and boisterous, but I had to learn. I was in a meeting with Dr. Murphy Savoy, and she actually told me to calm down in the meeting. And it was a real like, okay, yeah, you're here as the adult, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And she actually said to me in the meeting, you're going to get more flies with honey. And I was like, right. They're not going to help my kids if they're mad at me, So I had to kind of learn to temper myself. But at the same time, just different little strategies. I had a resource teacher that I had an amazing relationship with for 3 years, and she would text me. She would, we just had a very open line of communication. And I have found the best thing for my children is for me to be very honest with staff. I don't hold things back. If my kids are off their meds for some reason, or if something dramatic has happened in the household and the kids are traumatized by it, they overheard something and took it the wrong way, I'm calling my point person at the school and I'm explaining,
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
Whatever it may be. And I'm very honest with the schools in the sense that, so I divided the children early on, so they would be dealing, as individuals instead of as one unit. So they went to different schools and they chose whether or not to tell people they were a twin. And one chose to tell everybody and one told nobody.
Right.
So I oftentimes in meetings, you go to a meeting and it can be very discouraging sometimes. Often you're met with the list of they did this and they did this and they did this and they're not doing this well, and this happened and this happened and this happened. And oftentimes I would have to say to those people, I need you to remember, I have another one. This isn't it. Like I do this times 2. And the other child has completely different needs. Right. And I had to be very honest with, we can't do homework. I can't do that.
Yes.
I can facilitate that till the cows come home. I'll send in whatever you'd like, but at what cost to my family?
Right.
At what cost to my child's self-esteem and to our relationship? And it's just not worth it. There's been different times when teachers didn't communicate well. I asked for a journal home. I'll create it. I'll send it in for you. Things like break boxes, like Kim talked about. My child loves to color. He loves kind of mindfulness activities. So to color, to do a puzzle. He mouths everything. So I will send in the biggest jar of gum I can find constantly. Just every little strategy. Even having doctors who are willing to go to school meetings or psychologists who are willing to go to school meetings.
Right. Cool.
If I'm having a hard time often with a school, I'll try, and then I'll come with the psychologist.
Wow. That is such a great compliment to what, Kim's sort of journey, and then you adding all of these sort of, very concrete strategies around that.
Mm-hmm. And I took some notes from what Kim said. So we're always learning and we're always growing.
Yeah.
Just thinking of things in a different way and looking at them from a different perspective.
Yes. Excellent. Yes. So peer-to-peer support's all about. I think Corinne's you're back.
There she is.
Catherine, how about you? What would tell us a little bit about your advocacy journey as a parent in the school system and how it worked?
So some things were a little easier in that my daughter had a personal learning plan automatically and a behavior plan automatically because her disabilities were so obvious. You know,
Right.
she goes to the middle to lower functioning, like they would say. So we had those things in place. And people were looking out for this, like in kindergarten. She had the one-on-one EA going right into school.
Right.
So that made things easier. But there's some things like maybe the plans that were put in place were not the right plans for her. Sometimes the EA was not the right fit. Might have been a great EA for somebody else, but not for her, right? So we had those challenges. So those challenges led to things like, you know, being sent home from school, being suspended, and like some of the things I did wrong is I'm really empathetic and feeling person, like, and like the feelings are the most intense things when it comes to my children.
Yeah.
So I get the call, you know, pick her up from school. She's falling apart. We can't have her here. So two things go through my mind. One, it's disrupting my day and my work. And I'm trying, you know, like not a realization that I'm a person outside of my kids, right?
Right.
And also, my daughter's going to be left out and excluded. I know when I get there, it's going to be so hard to get her out because she loves school and she's not going to understand why they don't want her there. It's going to hurt her. So sometimes I've gone at them with guns blazing because I'm like, how dare you do this to her? Everybody deserves to be at school.
Yes.
Every parent deserves to put their kid on the bus and then get them off the bus at the end of the day, right? So I had to learn to tone that down a little. And one of my tips was like picking up from school. Don't leave the house right away. Wait 10 minutes. Sometimes I literally need to cry and then pull that crap together, then get in the car and go there.
Right.
Don't put her in the car, even if they want her out, until you feel safe. Even if you're in the hallway and school doesn't like it, I'm not getting in a car until everyone's safe.
Right.
And if you have a meeting, bring a friend, bring a professional. Because it's intimidating to be the one parent hearing the list of what's not going right and a whole bunch of school people there.
Right.
Sometimes it's just a friend in a blazer taking notes. Like you've got to have that there for yourself. And sometimes, you know, I will point out what's wrong. Like ABA does not work for my daughter. Rewards and consequences don't work. But I made sure I told them what would work.
Right.
And that was around relationship building.
Yes.
Making her feel safe. I have refused to sign a behavior plan before because it's ABA and leaving my daughter alone in a room until she can pull her crap together. Well, that's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I've given them the tips. I've told them about the stuffed animals and eventually doing that with, you know, like, oh, and empathizing with them because I'm a parent. I know how hard it is if she gets violent. So when I went in and I said, oh my gosh, that must be so hard. Here's what we do at home that helps us. When I did that, eventually they started trying those things and said, hey, if we use a stuffed animal, that works. Hey, if we clear the room, but we stand in the doorway, she feels safe and that works.
So tell me, I know I've heard you talk about this, you know, having this, it's almost like a puppet situation. Maybe describe a little bit about that, because I have a feeling that would work with a lot of kids, especially kids who have similar diagnosis to your daughter.
Yeah. So, and I just stumbled upon it in accident, you know, by accident at home, because all the calm down techniques, all the connected stuff wasn't working. And I realized my daughter cannot communicate sometimes with an adult. She does not feel safe when she's unregulated.
Yeah.
But the stuffed animal is something safe. She's got a great imagination. She loves stuffed animals and toys. So basically, the stuffed animal walks her through the calm down technique, and will even go through she's even been known to take the stuffed animal at home to the fridge and go over calm down techniques so the stuffed animal knows. So literally within 5 to 10 minutes, she's hugging the stuffed animal and they're talking about calming down. It's just me using the voice. My mouth is moving. She really knows it's me, but it works. And at school, they discovered, wow.
Yes.
Instead of an hour of freaking out, and it's so awful to think of her suffering that long,
Yeah.
and us having to call a parent, do that, and she calms down.
Right. Wow.
At her high school, they have at least 4 stuffed animals and have them in different spots.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Interesting. Okay. So, I think you all sort of somewhat answered this already in this question, but, as a specific question, how do you, it's obviously emotionally exhausting to be a parent of a child that's having a lot, has had a lot of trauma, particularly if they're struggling in school, which many, many kids do. How do you kind of maintain your own well-being around that? Like, how do you have that mindset so that, or how do you approach things in a way that keeps you well? And I'll get Kim to start again.
Okay. I would say it's extremely important to be able to take care of your mental health and your own well-being. We can't take care of others unless we're healthy ourselves. For me, because it's going to come across as somewhat simplistic sometimes, but I love my son. And I have an adopted son and a bio daughter, and I love them the same. That love that you have for them puts them before you. That's normally what happens, right? We put our kids first, which is okay. But again, behind the scenes, we have to be taking care of ourselves to be able to keep advocating and keep putting like child focused, right? So counseling, I'm a huge advocate of counseling. I'll be honest that I've probably attended, 8 different counselors over the past 15, 20 years. Times where I feel like I don't want to burden other people, quote, with my problems, even though I have wonderful best friends, a wonderful support system. You want to reach out and spread the wealth. You want to get support everywhere instead of just with one person all the time. Because you don't want to damage other relationships too, right? So reach out and talk to your best friend sometimes. Reach out to your spouse or your parent, your mom, whoever you feel safe with in a non-judgmental space. Then reach out to them, but also seek professional help when you need it. And they can give such wonderful guidance too. And then you can go to family counseling if you would like, right? But self-care isn't always just your bath. It's not just going for your walk. It goes further than that. And I know that living in a home where my child can become dysregulated anywhere between, 2 to 15 times a day, on a bad day, it's very difficult to stay positive and stay motivated. But it's our job. That's our job as parents, right? So continue to be child focused, attuned to your child, but take care of yourself. And there's so many different ways to do that. And look into what your passions are. Follow your passion and make that time. So get the babysitter, keep up with your marriage, keep it healthy, keep it growing. If you're a single parent, get that babysitter, go out to your paint and sip nights, laugh with your friends. Because I'm telling you, it changes everything. It just motivates you and gives you energy to get up the next morning and do the same thing. Without, you can slip into your depressions. It creates anxiety amongst your own, nervous system. And then your mental health suffers even worse. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And those healthy relationships in your lives, you do figure out quickly. I've heard this from a lot of adoptive parents, who are the people in your life who are you can really be safe with, emotionally to share and get support from, and who are the ones that maybe you can't be, right?
And
Like you,
I
yeah.
should add here, holy Hannah, how did I forget this? 'Cause I had my
Oh,
mom hat on. See, my work hat. I gotta switch to my work hat.
oh, okay.
Oh my goodness, reach out to NBAF.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
this
Yeah, we'll say
peer-to-peer
that.
connection, yeah, this peer-to-peer connection that we have created has been phenomenal. Come to
Yes,
our groups, right? We have so many throughout the month that the friendships and the support that you get there, it sometimes can be more than what you get in your own personal life outside
yeah,
of that, because we understand your journey better than anyone. So
yes.
I leaned on NBAF immediately when I was going through my adoption process. And that's how I learned. That didn't work for NBAF when I went through my adoption process. So that is definitely, so there, I put my work hat on because I have my
Okay,
work
thank
hat
you.
on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're switching hats all the time. Okay,
Yeah.
Corinne, what, do you have something to add to what Kim said in terms of what works for you to, what helped you be well, or, you know?
Well, it's hard following Kim because we seem to say the same things. But I do all of the things that Kim listed. So
Yeah,
I think part of my advocacy was to fight for my children to have the best of the best. So we have, the best psychologist and who sees me as well as the children, because an unhealthy parent is an unhealthy family.
yes,
Um, so we do everything from the professional care. I walk 5 kilometers every day. I'm very honest with my friends and family, but I'm also blessed to have, because of my job, I do work in the school system. So because of my job, um, I have a great network around me of people
Mm,
who not deal with, but who work with, and are
right.
very knowledgeable on children's issues, and on trauma as well. So I have this wonderful network of friends that I work with as well. And I work with behavior experts and, district staff and things from time to time. And I can ask questions, and I can, I can text people at midnight and say, I can't do this anymore. And they say, yes, of course you can, Kareen, you know how to do this, go do
Mm,
it. But just being very honest with people, with family, and saying, I need you. Saturday night gone by, we were invited to go to a friend's house, but we're going through something right now. And I couldn't send the boys to the same place, even though they're 15. I needed them to go to 2 different places. And
right.
so my mother bouncing back to me right away saying, I'll take one upstairs, your father will take one downstairs, go out with your friends.
Wow.
We'll figure it out, we'll keep them apart. Now we ended up staying home, just personal preference. I got home, I got comfortable, I didn't want to move. But just being really honest with people and saying, this
Yes.
is what I need from you.
Well, I
And
remember oh,
no, that's okay. And I guess I've always I continue to be surprised by how quickly people rise up and fill the need.
I remember, we had you did some, helped us out with one of our sessions recently, and you talked about how you realized when you were in, were just before the placement, I think, you talked about how this is what I need from you. And do you want to just
Yeah.
retell that a little bit?
Oh, so what I was saying then was that just prior to adopting the boys, and as I said earlier, they moved in with us at 6, they had just turned 6. I had this kind of light bulb aha moment where I thought, I don't need people's money. I don't need their gifts. I don't need those things as much from people. They're nice, but I need their time. And that's what I'm going to need the most. And so I had said to my mother, I'm going to need you. I'm going to need your time. I'm going to need your presence. And I live in a community that I grew up in, and all my family lives here. And so my parents and I had an agreement that if I called and if I said, I need you to come, they came, and they took whoever I needed them to take. So having twins often with reactive attachment disorder, one would rage and one would be calm. And so I always felt like the one who was calm was like a hostage of, 3 hours of raging. So my parents would come and pick up that child and take them. They could be in their underwear and rubber boots on the sidewalk, crying dirty, not had supper, whatever it may be. But my parents would come and take that child and go give them a better experience and fulfill whatever need they had in that moment. And then leave me to just take care of what I needed to take care of.
Wow. Wonderful. Wild. Yeah. Good people are a big part of being okay. Good people around you. So Catherine, how do you, what in terms of, for your experience, how have you learned, or what strategies do you use to maintain your own, I'm okay, right?
I have learned, at first I thought, and I grew up with this, we don't ask for help, we do it ourselves attitude. Bless
Yeah.
my mom, right?
Yeah.
But I have learned over the years to reach out. I've expanded my own networks and my kids' networks. So if I'm having a rough time, I can reach out and say, hey, to my neighbor upstairs, can you watch my daughter? Can you take my son for a walk? Can you text someone? I can do that. But I also expanded my friend circle. There's always someone I can text. I try to get out once a week. And the idea in getting out is having a ridiculous amount of laughter and inappropriate things. And like Kim said, connecting with stuff like our network,
Yeah.
other parents who are going through what you are going, so you don't feel strange.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they've really said all this stuff, but it's important to know you're not alone.
Yes. Finding others who understand your journey. Even just talking to others is huge.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have a couple more questions to go through, but not too long. So you've all talked about your own sort of personal journeys, but if you just, when we, to sort of for the people listening in, in a nutshell, basically, what do kids who have trauma backgrounds really need in school? And I'll start with Kim again.
Attunement.
Attunement. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You really need to be able to know the child, get to know the child. And you have to be careful with our kids with attachment disorder, how and what avenues you get to know them, right? We can't be asking them where you're born and who are your brothers and sisters. They're not living with their brothers and sisters a lot. They don't know why their name was chosen. A lot of it's more about attuning to their needs while they're at school. Do they come, dysregulated? If you notice that they're doing things that show dysregulation, such as, snapping a pencil, sitting there with a look on the face, withdrawing, something different than their other days at school.
Yeah.
They're having a good day. So tune to their needs and then focus on that with them. So let them go to the PLEP rooms, let them go to the resource teacher, ask for help, during their hours at school. We also need professionals to be trained.
Right. Yes.
We're placing our children in your care.
Yeah.
We understand that there are many, many challenges to a plethora of issues with many different children.
Yeah.
But take the training when you can. We offer free training. Look at it. Suzanne will be talking about our webinar that's coming up. That's going to be phenomenal. But understanding our children's diagnoses, I present through work with my psychologist and counter psychologist, we present a profile and it talks about all 9 brain domains because the 10th one's medical. So the 9 brain domains and what it looks like in my son. So if you're done that profile, you're going to know him pretty well and you're going to be able to see the signs when he makes and things like that. So it's really about being educating the educators.
Yeah.
And when you have both of those, you got a great start.
Yeah. Wonderful. So Corinne, do you have anything to add to that? The hard act to follow.
Yes.
You all
your
are.
word, Kim's word was attunement. My word is connection. I really feel that the kids, especially with a trauma background, really need a genuine connection. And I spoke a bit about that earlier. It's very legitimate because it's very real here in our home. One child who is much higher functioning than the other really looks for that connection. So when he starts to spin out of control and he's being disruptive, he's not trying to give you a hard time, he's having a hard time.
Right.
And he needs you to connect. So he needs somebody to look him in the eye. He needs purposeful touch. And that's as easy as a hand on the back and looking him in the eye and being genuine with him, finding an area of his interest, giving him a chore to do where he's going to feel success at the end. All just tiny ways that you can connect, but taking a moment. So in middle school, they would call the principal and say, you know, he's driving me crazy. This is happening, that's happening. And he'd say, send him down. And he had a great relationship with the principal. The principal would chat with him. They'd do a couple jobs. They might share a snack. He'd go back to class and there'd be no issue.
Wow.
So connection is a huge thing.
Yes. And what works for each child, finding the right connection, you know,
correct.
For one
right
child. Yeah.
Connect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not who you choose or who you think, but who they connect to.
Yes, I was just going to add to Corinne's there because she, like, I love that the word, right, that you're using, connectiveness and stuff. Like Connor connected with an EA. Well, he's out of that school now, but that EA still comes and visits him once a month at this school. So we get a true connection. And that looks like that EA attuned to him, connected in the healthy way that he wants to continue that. One of his teachers actually taught the next grade level so that they could follow Connor and 3 other students because they knew that these children needed that relationship and that they weren't ready. It was through COVID, right? So they went to the next year. So we have some real heroes in our group too.
Wow. Yeah. So Catherine, do you have much to add to that?
Similar, I mean, connectedness is relationship. I always say, you know, to every, like, if I have 3 words for you, it's relationship, relationship, relationship.
Yeah.
My daughter will behave if she has a good relationship. You'll see less problems. She'll learn better. When she was in 8th grade and they were having all these bumps at the beginning of the year and they assigned her a new EA, I said, for the next month, I don't care if you can't get her to finish the math sheet. Build a relationship with her, academics minimal. And they found out once they built that relationship, behavior problems decreased, like I said.
Right.
And she was willing to do work. Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So it's complicated but simple, right? When you think about it. So one of the things that we just wanted, the last question we have is how can parents and educators learn more to support children in school who've had trauma backgrounds?
Back with me?
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Well, of course, they can attend all of our resources. I mean, this is our specialty. You know, children with trauma, adopted, foster, kinship placements, etc. So reach out to NBAF. We have a plethora of free webinars and wonderful resources and advice. Ask questions to the parents, you know, learn the child's needs, reach out to the child's team outside of the school, whether it's, you know, the OTs, if they're not through the school with the ISD teams. Have a group approach. Because of course, what better thing to do than work on a team? Everyone with the same focus, the same goals, and looking for the best positive outcomes. Well, you're going to do the best practices to get that. And when you have a team of expertise around you, well, my goodness, you know, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, excellent. Catherine and Corinne, do you have more to add to Kim's?
No, I would say the same thing. Just depend on the people around you. Oftentimes it can be very isolating to be part of big behavior and massive meltdowns. And
yes,
we went through, I mean, you know, some of the story, but like extreme behavior for about 3 years. And it can be very isolating, but not to just sit and marinate in that, but to reach out and say, I'm having a really hard time right now. And I found that every time I reached out to somebody, to whoever it was, even somebody who had no idea the journey, you know, they didn't live this life. To It was always kind of sobering to me to go, oh wait, I'm not alone, because they might have birthed their child and had a similar, you know, circumstance. And so every time that I've been brave enough to say, this is really hard, somebody has come back and said, I understand because of this. So
Yeah.
to not just sit there and kind of, I guess, marinate's my word of the minute,
That's
but
an
to
excellent word.
just to be in it and, you know, this is my life and this is how it is.
Yeah.
But to reach out and to say, I need help, it's hard. And then you find out you're really not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the adoption fostering community, there are such good people. Like, I love this work because I meet and get to know and get to be part of a community of very motivated, intelligent, compassionate, you know, group of people who are just so centered on kids. So it's never about this, oh my God, I can't believe your child did that. It's more like, okay, what can we do? Or why is that happening? Or how can we make sure you're okay through that? You know, it's very much, it's just a really lovely, lovely community to be part of. And some of the best people are part of this community. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. Yeah. So Catherine, to just give you one last opportunity there.
Well, I'm probably going to say what you were going to say,
Oh,
Suzanne.
okay.
So a great way to learn about
Okay, I'll
trauma
let you.
and how to handle it in school is Tuesday night, November 9th at 7:30. We're having a webinar by world-renowned trauma expert. She does training all over North America for schools to make them trauma informed. So it's called, her name's Heather T. Forbes. It's called Classroom 180, helping children heal at school, creating trauma informed classrooms. Go to our website, nbadoption.ca, look under support meetings, and you can sign up. Bring your family, bring your friends, bring your kids' team, bring their school team, their professionals, bring everyone. And we're going to help this make kids, like, schools better for kids.
Yeah. We have hundreds of people already signed up, but it's free, it's accessible, it's virtual. And, you know, for anyone that is francophones, we'll have simultaneous translation. So spread the word, because, you know, part of it is, you know, come because you want to, you know, hear all this stuff. And even if you've heard her once, it's worth listening to her over and over again, because she reinforces, you know, all the key strategies. But we also want to, you know, sprinkle this province with, you know, there's a lot of people doing some amazing work. And I think this is just going to propel them even more and encourage that way of approaching it. So, yeah. So thank you. This was wonderful. We're almost right on time too, an hour. So have good days the rest of your day. And I'm just going to take us off. Thank you, Facebook community. And we'll add those links to our comments in a few minutes so that you can easily access what else is happening this month. And we'll be having a Francophone panel similar to this tomorrow morning. Bye.